This is the Catoctin Aqueduct, one of 11 water bridges found along the C&O Canal that stretches from Washington, D.C. to Cumberland, Maryland. Built in 1832, it was described as the most beautiful aqueduct on the line. But it had a problem. The center arch was not structurally sound, and by the early 1900s, the aqueduct began to sag in the middle. In the early 1970s, it collapsed after a hurricane passed through. The original stones cut in the 1830s fell into Catoctin Creek and were fished out and laid along the woods next to what remained of the aqueduct. The aqueduct remained in its collapsed condition for nearly 4 decades, and it was never seriously thought that the aqueduct could be restored. In 2010, a project began to restore the aqueduct using as many original stones as possible, and then cutting replacement stones and fitting them all together like a giant 3D puzzle. In 2011, the project was complete, and the new Catoctin Aqueduct was rededicated by the National Park Service. My video of that ceremony was misplaced for 12 years until recently rediscovered. Here is the video and some interviews from that day.
This was the transportation history of the Western world going on right here in Maryland, right here in Frederick County.
You know, when George Lewis first suggested that we undertake a partnership to restore the Catoctin Aqueduct, I thought it was beyond a long shot. And so today, to stand on the aqueduct, to see those original stones that were cut in the 1830s back in exactly the place they were, again, it really gives me goosebumps, because it's that kind of major accomplishment and commitment to historical integrity and accuracy. And to look down Catoctin Creek to the mouth and to the Potomac beyond, see the bald eagle soaring over us today, it really inspires me to recall how great this country really is.
I love history. I spent 30 years in the military, so obviously you learn a lot of history and you try not to make a lot of mistakes. That's why you learn the history, not make them again. I live close by. I enjoy the park and the outdoors, and the more I looked at this, before there was a steel Bailey Bridge across here, and then there was undergrowth and brush all here, so you didn't even know the piece of the aqueduct that was still left was under here. So it was first trying to gain people awareness, appreciation of the C&O Canal, and then the various structures of it, eventually an aqueduct. And you know, you just kind of got into it. You got a passion, and I was able to work it around other responsibilities, and then to see other people get involved. And And you know, first you're kind of half in, half out, but then when you realize that these people are putting their trust in me, whether it's writing a check in their money or their volunteer time or their sweat, you just can't let them down.
The 11 aqueducts along the C&O Canal are in various conditions, but it was the one considered the most beautiful that had almost completely collapsed. The Catoctin Aqueduct, like the others, was a bridge carrying canal water over large creeks and streams. The aqueducts were vital links for boats to float 184.5 miles between Georgetown and Washington, D.C. to Cumberland, Maryland. Catoctin Creek is just past the canal's 51-mile marker. In 1973, the west and center arches collapsed. Many stones were lost in the water, but many of the heavy blocks were painstakingly lifted out and placed in the woods nearby, eventually cataloged and numbered. With many missing stones, no obvious plan existed to repair the catastrophic damage, not to mention the cost of undertaking such a project. And so the salvaged stones sat for nearly 40 years, almost as silent tomb markers to the past glory of the C&O Canal. Thanks to the spirited efforts of veterinarian and local resident George Lewis, a groundbreaking ceremony was held April 24, 2010, after the money had been raised and plans were drawn and approved to reconstruct the aqueduct.
All right, one more shovel. It's a big aqueduct.
Fast forward 18 months to the dedication ceremony for the restored aqueduct.
That's her. She was after the goats when I was there.
She gets a lot of attention.
Oh. What's her name? Her name is Lil.
Lil? There was a great story behind that.
No, that's not the Lil after Lillian Langdon. Right?
Yeah, it is.
She's still...
That's right.
I thought Lil had died.
Lillian dies, yes. But
Lil still... Okay.
Still going strong. We got her in 1994.
94. Yeah, 17 years.
It's location, location, location. And as our country was developing in transportation modes, the C&O Canal being built out of Georgetown, going to Cumberland, and the idea is eventually to get to where Pittsburgh is nowadays, and the competing B&O railroads, so C&O Canal out of Georgetown, D.C., B&O Railroad out of Baltimore, and they're both want to get as far west as fast as they can, but they both come together right here in Frederick County, Point of Rocks, just 3 miles down the river from here. So then they travel together through here, but there was only room for the wagon trail that was here. Certainly not a railroad, certainly not a canal. So the competition, the fights, the buying, stealing, whatever it is they could to get this land. And they were held up for 3 years in lawsuits and at Point of Rocks. If you were an attorney worth your salt, then Francis Scott Key, Webster, Tawney, you were involved in this case. And finally, the court settled it and basically says, boys, you got to share your toys. And the canal was given the lead to build on behalf of both of them through here. So the point you're standing at right here is the transportation history of our nation moving west comes together here. You can see standing right there the Potomac River. George Washington's vision of this was the one road west on the river, and then after that the canal and the railroad. Before that the dinosaurs traveled through here. Then the Indians and the French and Indians and the traders and animals. Because you see most of the valleys and mountains, you think about going from here to Pittsburgh, kind of run north and south, and they were barriers that canals or trains couldn't get over, okay? But there was one road that crossed all those almost at 90 degrees, and that was the Potomac River Valley. It cuts a road, a natural road west all through there. The reason the canal and the railroad are here is to get the low, flat land in the river bottom, okay? So you think about it, if you drive from here to Cumberland, valleys, hills, valleys, mountains, hills. If you go along the river here, that change in elevation from Georgetown to Cumberland is only about 602 feet, I think. That's all. So you build a canal and you build a railroad along this area, because that way you can deal with that gradual increase in altitude or decrease in altitude. So this is a very special place, because from right here you can see, interpret, and understand the relationship of the two titans, particularly of our transportation history. And it all occurred right here within 45 miles of Washington, D.C.
It was always an iconic structure, but it was, an iconic structure in ruins. Today it's restored, and people will make a point of coming down here. They already are. All during the construction, people came and they watched as heavy cranes and big trucks hauled stone in and repositioned historic stone. So it's a point of fascination, and I think with the Waysides that we and the Car Fund have put up, begin to convey the story of why this is an important place.
And if you get a chance, if you haven't, go to this Wayside right down here and view it from there. That's the view. This was definitely, and you'll understand even better why this was noted, beside the Crooked Aqueduct, the most beautiful aqueduct on the line. The only thing really missing is aqueducts always leaked a little bit, water running down the outside. This one, and we have the old pictures of it, had ivy, like English ivy, all flowing down the sides of it. So whether it was summer or winter, the ivy was always sparkly because the leaves were damp and wet. And so that's just added to it to be known as the most beautiful aqueduct on the line.
It's really done. We are here today to cut the ribbon, rededicate, and celebrate the restoration of the Catoctin Aqueduct. And there is no better example of what a community partnership can accomplish than this beautiful structure right here before us. And what an accomplishment that is. Thank you, everyone. It's nice to return. 18 months ago, I was here when we did the groundbreaking, whatever we called it at that time, and maybe the stone recovery, in order to get this project started. 18 months. It's a lot better than 38 years in which this aqueduct was down, or over 175 years when it was constructed. This is an amazing accomplishment to preserve the history of this region. We celebrate the completion of a project, yes, but we also celebrate our heritage. We celebrate the economic investment. We recognize that we have made it in America. This aqueduct was for its time, represented an architectural and an engineering feat that was unique to this region. We also show that we will make it in America in the future. This represents our vision for our future in our region. Congratulations for a job well done.
We are able to tell a story of early transportation in America, of the battle between railroad and canal and their ways west, for economic prosperity. We're able to preserve the story of a people when not so terribly long ago, everyday folks like you and I earned a living, made a life along this waterway. Families worked together as a crew on their boats and at the lock houses to make the canal operable. Although the pace was slow and steady, the hours were long, making canal life tedious and hard work. Standing here today, we understand a connection between our lives and the lives of those who lived and worked here on the canal, as the restored aqueduct echoes the story of past commerce, prosperity, hard labor, and industry. So each year, over 4 million people visit the C&O Canal today, visitors from all over the world. All will have the ability to enjoy this restored structure.
I want to pay a special note to the Waysides. I promised I wouldn't use this term to myself, but I want to use it anyway. We really pushed the edge in breaking some traditional Park Service china on these Waysides. And I would like you to try to see all 5 of them before you leave today. They're a little different. If you like them, please let the park people know and let Ion Design know. We presented them with concepts, but it was Ion, particularly Ruth and Dave and Ion Design, who brought those concepts together. We have Waysides here that are big colored modern photographs that show the laborers who built this in the steel, cement, and concrete in this current time, 2011. And you can't look at that, but help think about, remember, the original laborers who built this aqueduct. We have Waysides by a local artist, Richard Schleck. And my charge to Richard was, I'd like something from the air looking at this that will convey how this was the center of life at the time, how busy it was. So visitors can understand the relationship, which is often hard to translate, of the railroad viaduct, of the canal aqueduct, of Catoctin Creek, of Potomac River, where people can understand this was almost the center of the transportation world in that time in the early 1800s. We have a wayside where even the visually impaired can touch and feel an original keystone, a new cut keystone, and another wayside that explains the various parts of an aqueduct.
And lastly, as we prepare to cut the ribbon, we have arranged for a very special participant to lead us in that effort. Would Rangers Mark Myers and Allie Boutros please bring Lil the mule to the ribbon? And after the ribbon has been cut, Lil will lead us across the aqueduct and back down the towpath. Lil is going to come up here. We're going to spread the ribbon across the aqueduct. I'm going to ask the speakers to join me at the ribbon. And then I'm going to ask all of you, more than 88 years, we're going to have a mule cross the aqueduct here on the C&O Canal. So speakers, if you will join me. Let's not cut any fingers. So, on the count of 3, we'll cut through the ribbon and rededicate the Catoctin Aqueduct. 1, 2, 3. Just like the aqueduct.
I think I just got your hands.
We'll be wearing shorts here. All right, we did it. Congratulations, everyone. Congratulations to all of you.
All right. I think a few of you have done this before. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you.
All right, now, the real intent here is to have all of you follow us across the aqueduct. So if you're up there on the towpath, go down the steps and come back, and we're all going to follow Lil. Literally, the first time in 88 years we'll have had a mule officially walking across the aqueduct towpath. Come on, follow us. It's our first official walk across the restored Catoctin Aqueduct.
there was all kind of history here people didn't know about. And when you start doing something like this, then people, oh, I remember I did have an aunt or an uncle that worked on the canal, or I did have somebody who did this and that. And then people start taking ownership. You know, and just today, this walk, the idea of the superintendent to walk through it and then along the side here, they own a piece of this now, and they'll come back. And in the number of new friends it has made for the park, people who had never been out here before. Pepper Scotto and her husband Frank, they held 4 5K Catoctin Aqueduct runs from Pointer Rocks to here. We were just amazed the number of runners in those races each year who said, wow, I'd never been here. I didn't know the park was here. This is cool. I'm going to come back. You know, and so it's making new friends for the park. It's a magnet.
Okay. Mark, Allie, please lead Will across the aqueduct. All right.
Thank you all.
Well, I kept seeing into it, but oh, okay. Where's
Today we saw a mule walk across the towpath for the first time in 88 years. That is absolutely remarkable. Seeing a community come together and value their shared history is really one of the big things that's important about national park, what we preserve. Getting a community to reconnect and reestablish a relationship with their past can help guide us in the future, understand the values we had in the past, and say we still value those things today. Hard work, ingenuity, enterprise. That's part of what we are celebrating.
You know, there are 11 aqueducts along the entire 184.5 miles of the C&O Canal, making them rather rare as masonry structures go. Their preservation is a very high priority for the National Park Service and for the park staff. It would have been very convenient in 2005, after the restoration of the Monocacy Aqueduct, just downstream, to sit back on our laurels and proclaim that we had done good, for indeed we had. But resting on laurels is not what leadership and citizenship are all about. I recall that day in May of 2005 when we rededicated the Monocacy Aqueduct. George Lewis came up to me and said, "The Catoctin Aqueduct is next." I may have put on my best poker face and said, "Sure, great idea." But inside I was thinking that this was the longest of long shots. But as you all look over your shoulder, you can see that even the longest of long shots, where impossible dreams do come true. They can come true when just a single individual says, "Let's do it." If you are a leader, a gentleman in this case, someone with extraordinary vision and integrity, you will find that a tsunami of support and energy will soon develop. There appears no pre-approved or standing award that we could confer upon George that would fit his extraordinary and long-lasting contributions. So like George, we created something out of nothing, an award never before presented. And if you'll join with me, Dr. George Lewis, it's my extreme pleasure to present you with the first ever Superintendent's Award for Excellence in Citizen Stewardship. It is an extraordinary accomplishment. George, thank you very much. I don't think it'll blow away. Let me just say it.
May I respond with a song?
You may.
You've been surprising me, so let me surprise you. And I can't sing. But the first music group we were going to have, and we have an outstanding one today, with Peter, Paul, and Mary, but we couldn't get them. But you may remember some of the verses that Peter, Paul, and Mary had, and they go something like, if I had some good hands, I'd pick up a hammer. If I had a hammer, I'd pound some stone. And if I had some stone, I'd build an aqueduct. And Superintendent, this verse is for you. If I had an aqueduct, I'd fill it with water. And if I had a mule, I'd haul a boat. And if I had a boat, I'd lock it through lander lock. And if I had a lock, I'd hang it with gates. All for my brothers and my sisters, all over this land.
I certainly hope we have a recording of that. Because it's going viral, I can tell you that right now.
A few other interesting points include an unusual navigation maneuver at Catoctin Creek.
It's unique among the 11 aqueducts. I mean, there's only 11 to begin with out of our 1,350 historic structures in the park. But what's unique about it is that it's not a straight line. If you think about a canal boat captain piloting a 90-foot long boat full of 120 tons of coal and being pulled by just 2 mules, you had to become pretty adept at turning basically an S-turn. That can be pretty challenging in a sedan or pickup truck of today, but you do that with a 120-ton canal boat with just a rudder to rely on. You know, it really makes you marvel at the skill of those boat captains in their day.
The sides of the canal prism were very steep and narrow, and you can get a sense of how deep it was. I'm 5'11", and this was filled almost to the brim. This was sometimes called the Crooked Aqueduct because the approach to it was not straight. Boat captains had to make an S maneuver in order to straighten their vessel and enter squarely into the aqueduct. And as you can see, the approach to the aqueduct is not straight. Boat captains had to make a left-hand turn into the aqueduct, and as they exited the aqueduct on the other side, they had to make a sharp right-hand turn. This was the area just downstream from the aqueduct where all of the stones were laid out and sat for nearly 4 decades. Over the years, the new stones have weathered and are beginning to resemble the original stones that they share space with. This is the Danger Aqueduct's face, as debris piles up against the footings. This wood rail was a guardrail of sorts for the mules who towed the canal boats through the aqueduct. Their hooves would rub against the side of the rail, and they knew not to go any further or they'd fall into the water. This is Catoctin Creek, which leads out to the Potomac River. My personal connection with this aqueduct is in the form of an adopted stone, one of many which helped to fund the restoration effort. My stone is very easy to find. All I have to do is look for the notch on the berm side. Here's my stone! The Catoctin Aqueduct was a 19th century masterpiece of stonework and part of a vital transportation link envisioned by George Washington to expand the young nation westward. Its reconstruction using a modern steel framework will ensure this piece of U.S. history will long outlive the original structure and continue its role as a link to maintaining an unbroken canal path now used by hikers and cyclists in a protected national park setting. That's my stone.